Hello, everybody. I think I recognize you. Thank you, Sarah. I recognize a fair amount of you guys, and some of you I know your names, some I don't. But how many of you have been to one of these presentations before? That's great. That's great. I can't believe there are people who actually want to come and see my photos. This is great. And if you need to leave early, I won't feel fair. Well, first let me greet you in the way that everyone in Nepal greets you. When you see them on the trail, I'm sure you've seen this before, they say namaste. And it basically means I hope that the light in me becomes the light in you, or the light in the universe. It's very friendly. Everybody does it. You might have a gazillion things in your hands, but you're going to do that when you see people walk down the street, which is really something. A couple facts about Nepal. There it is. That's where it is, if you didn't know where it is. Just north of India, over by Bangladesh. Up in here is the Kashmiri area that you may have heard about some of the troubles that have just been very recently, where some of the Pakistani terrorists who came in and shot some of the Hindi folks in India. India has retaliated, but Nepal is far away from that issue. And even though the country is made up of a lot of Hindi and Buddhists, they get along very well. There's a small Muslim population. How do you get to Nepal? Well, you have to fly through Doha, which is in Qatar. And I went through Doha, and I got there after 14 hours from a flight from San Francisco, and I had a 10-hour layover. I was walking through the airport, and I heard somebody say, "Hey, Bob Kelly." And I'm like, what is this? And there was Kelly Aline, who you might recognize on the right. If you've been to the presentation on Kilimanjaro, she was on her way to Tanzania to climb Kilimanjaro. And that was a girlfriend that she met up in there. And we sat and had tea and visited. They were a lot more aggressive than I was. They actually went to the gym in the Doha airport and worked out and did a bunch of stuff. I slept. And it was a crossroads because the World Cup was coming into Qatar. And so there was a lot of really cool traffic there. A couple of things about this.
Can we full screen this?
Yeah, let's full screen.
I don't know. Can we? Let me try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did it yesterday, but I don't do Mac computers.
How's that? Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Those guys look a lot nicer that way. So this is the country of Nepal broken down by geography. What you might not know is that we talk about the mountains of Nepal, where the elevations are up to 29,000 feet, as you know, with Everest. But they also, parts of Nepal are actually just 300 feet above sea level. And that's in the tropical area over here. This is where the Everest mass is, and this is where the Annapurna mass is. Kathmandu, the capital, is right here. And that'll become apparent here with a couple of the other maps I have. I went to Nepal for a couple reasons. Sheila and I, this is my wife Sheila here, she's also a great world traveler. We lived in Costa Rica for a year, and while we were there, we made great friends with a couple that had two little boys who grew up like little boys do. One of them became a Marshall Fellow. He graduated from Brown, and he was given a fellowship to go to Nepal to teach English in Kathmandu. And he was delayed for 1 year after another because of COVID. But Artie and Artie was his dad. I said, Artie, you know, when Oren goes to Nepal, we're going. And Artie said, okay, I guess we will. And sure enough, Oren headed over there, and then we made plans to join him. And coincidentally, my daughter Ada, who's a graduate of Great Falls High School, she was had left her job in Washington and was traveling around the world by herself, visiting friends and doing exciting things that she was enjoying. I called her and said, hey, I'm going to be in Nepal mid-October to mid-November of this year. If you get there, I'll take care of you. And she said, that's done. I'm there. I'll see you there. So we were 3 travelers, myself 4, and some folks over there that helped organize it. As far as Nepal, what's going on over there, their makeup is 81% are Hindi. 8.5% are Buddhist. There's a very small, less than 1%, that are Muslim population, and then lots of other religions that are over there all the time. Imports, their businesses, they're very close to India, not only geographically, but in trade. 63% of their imports come from India, and 71% of their exports go to India. So that's their main trading partner. And you see a lot of Indian influence, especially in the cities. They import 13% from China, and only 2% of goods from the United States. I think our stuff is too expensive for them. but they do export almost 12% of their products to the United States. Where did we go when we were over there? Kind of give you an overview of this trip. We started out in Kathmandu in the center of the country, which is right here. We were here for a while, and we went down here to Chitwan National Park, which is the jungle area of Nepal. We'll have some photos of that as well, which was really spectacular. We then made our way up to a town called Pokhara, which is in this area. There was a plane crash there about 2 or 3 years ago, and some folks died at the airport. It was mostly workers that were coming in from Kathmandu. And then we went up to this area, to the Annapurna Massif, and we did what was called the Annapurna Loop up in this area. We then came back through Pokhara. We took a very long and dusty 12-hour van ride back to Kathmandu. We regrouped. Artie went home. His son went back to teaching. And Ada and I made our way to the Lukla airport, and we flew to the Khumbu Valley up here in the Everest-Lhotse area. And we'll have some pictures of that. After we were done there, we came back to Kathmandu, and we all went our separate ways. Ada flew that direction. I flew that direction. Well, I'll get questions in a second, okay? You do that?
I'm just wondering what the green areas are on the map.
Oh, probably, I don't know. I don't know.
Fair enough.
I don't know. So, it was Great Falls to San Francisco, to Doha, to Kathmandu. I ran into Kelly. We went to Chitwan, Pokhara, and then these other communities that we talked about. Let me show you a little bit of what Kathmandu looks like. This is their flag, which is kind of unusual. It's the only flag that's not square or oblong in all the countries. This is the Kathmandu airport. And I want to apologize for some of these photos because they're mostly just personal photos of my friends and family. I wasn't taking these to bring home to a slideshow for a lot of people, but this is the crew. That's my daughter Ada on the right. Oren, who is was the Marshall Fellow over there. Artie, my great friend from Massachusetts. And this is Nima Sherpa. And Nima is the younger brother of the guy who owns the company that we arranged the trip with. And we'll meet him later. His name is Pem Sherpa. Sherpa is really a tribe. It's a people. Some people think that this is their job. The Sherpas carry things. Sherpa are actually a people. And he lives in a small village near Lukla, which is where you fly into to begin the trek to go to the Everest Base Camp and to Kokio Ridge. This was taken in Chitwan National Park. You can see it's very nice accommodations. We were comfortable the whole time. We were cold often, but we were comfortable most of the time. Down here, we were very warm, as a matter of fact. I put this on here. This is Kathmandu. This is outside our hotel room. I want you to watch people crossing the street. There are no corners to cross the street. This is light traffic. Watch this guy with the mask. He's just walking across.
Watch this guy crossing the street, yeah.
And here come two guys that are going to walk across.
Sort of an art to it here. Watch these guys. Slow down, slow down.
Totally oblivious. Yeah. That's Kathmandu. It's a big city. How big is it? There's 850,000 people that live in the valley, and there's 4 million that live in the metropolitan area. 10 years ago, there was an earthquake in Nepal that was devastating. 30,000 people died. This is a part of Kathmandu that was destroyed, and there are lots of photos on this. It happened April 15th, 2015, and it was devastating. Between that, which kept tourists away, and then COVID, which kept tourists away, they've really been hurting their economy. It's now really on the swing. But I think Ada and I were very lucky. We were there in 2022. So the country was open, but there weren't a throng of tourists like you hear about these days. Once you get into Kathmandu, in Kathmandu there are 10 World UNESCO sites, which are unbelievable. This happens to be a Buddhist temple that is called Buddhanath Temple. If it's a Buddhist temple, when you walk around it, you always find a small area where there's a Hindi temple as well, because they don't want to be exclusive. They want to share, and everyone is there to worship. And this is just a beautiful site that is in Kathmandu. These are some nighttime shots of the Nawari district in Kathmandu. And the Nawari are a people, a tribe, that occupied different parts of the city. And Oren, in fact, our friend, lived there. These are beautiful temples, and there's lots of history there, which I unfortunately don't remember. This is Nawari food that we ate at a restaurant. A meal like that cost about $1. You've got basically a tortilla, some bread, spinach, lentils, some potatoes, and noodles and stuff, and some rice, as well as the momos, which are back there, the dumplings. Everybody eats those, and all the guides and porters eat what's called dal bhat, and that's lentils and spinach, maybe an egg thrown in there if you're eating at a fancy place. And that costs like 50 cents when you do that. I've got a menu here to show you as well. My daughter sent me these. These are a couple souvenir things from entries and stuff. That's the Buddhanath temple on the top. The bottom there is an area called Darbar Square, which is in the city of Kathmandu. And we weren't really, and there's some of the money. There was about 130 of their currency, rupees, to $1. This is the square where that huge temple is, and you walk around it. And there are lots and lots of shops and lots of tourists and stuff. Very colorful area. Locals there, many more locals than tourists. This is downtown, the center of Darbar Square, which is kind of their old ancient area, which was really wrecked by the earthquake, but then repaired over time. And then this is a better picture than I could take of a special temple that is called the Monkey Temple. And there's probably 20 or 30 monkeys running around at any particular part of that thing that you're there. They're not very aggressive. Have any of you been to Nepal or in that part of the world? You have, okay. So if I say something wrong, would you correct me?
That was a long time ago.
Ooh, that's good. One time I was on a river and I was talking about geology, and on the second day of the trip I realized two of the guys on my boat were geologists. And I had to really backtrack and make sure I was not just BSing them the whole time. So again, these are some of the temples that are in Kathmandu. This is the Monkey Temple. We weren't really there to see the sights of Kathmandu, although they were fantastic. We were there to get into the mountains. But we were here for 3 days, kind of getting ready, acclimatizing. Nepal has 29 million people right now, is their last census. The city, like I say, in the valley, there's over 4 million. And in the whole town of Kathmandu, we crossed the city several times. It took an hour to get across. We saw one traffic light, and we saw no street signs. There are no street signs in that whole place. And there was one traffic light that had a cop kind of helping people go along there.
They see you weren't driving?
No, I was not driving. I was barely walking. Crossing those streets was enough, right? So, and here you see, this is a temple area, the Monkey Temple, and here's one of our friends. And they really kind of worship that. There's so many Hindi gods, and between Shiva and all the others, it's hard to tell, but obviously monkeys are a huge part of their culture. And that's a look out of what Kathmandu looks like. Constant flights, constant helicopters taking off, going into the mountains, and really feeding the tourism business of getting into the hills there. This is the center of Darbar Square, a very special area, and what you have here is something called the, what the heck is it called? There's a woman that is, they take this young kid who is under 12 years old, and she's here from the age of 2, and until she becomes a woman, until she experiences men's descent, she will occasionally stick her head out here at a certain viewing time. She lives there the whole time, and there's one festival a year, and that's what all these people are doing. They're waiting for her to come out, and they will put her on a litter and carry her through the streets of Kathmandu, and people will worship her. And I've got the name of this in here somewhere, but I don't remember what that was called. But anyway, that was her. So the deal is that while we were there waiting for this gal to come out, we could hear her screaming at her caregivers. And I don't know what it's like raising this child, but she's pampered, and she's sort of like the Dalai Lama when the kid is found at a very early age. But this gal was vocal, to say the least, as we were there. So
What happens after she has her?
she goes back to her village, and they bring in someone else. And it comes from a particular part of the country. And there's only about 6 or 7 cities in Nepal where they honor this. She happens to be for this region. And there's a longer story there, but again, it's been a while, and I just don't remember it. And you can see the tourist throng. I mean, this is a big tourist area, but not a lot, right? There weren't just tons of people there. This is the god of Shiva, the justice person. They used to bring people in front of this statue, and they would determine guilty or not and what the punishment was. Of course, this is a Gurkha. You've heard of them. Those are the guards. Those are the Green Beret of the Nepali army. And the yellow socks are kind of a thing. And this is actually a wax statue. And these guys are amazing, amazing soldiers. And then we have a lot of this influence as we go around. I put this on here because of the woodwork. You can just see how fine this is. Most of this is sandalwood, and this is all over that particular part of the city of Kathmandu. Crematoriums. This is the Bhagwati River, and if you are going to follow this ritual of burning your loved one when they die, they have these crematoriums. And so this river goes right through the middle of town, and these are the altars, for lack of a better term, where they will put the bodies on there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every year. And this is for the more common people that are there. And you can see them building the wood, the fire that they're going to place the body on. But if you have money, you get to come to the temple area, and you have a little special entrance area here. This is one that is just getting underway. You can see the families there. They're still wearing masks, COVID time, etc. And here is another family, another group that's going to be doing something very similar. It doesn't smell, but there is a lot of smoke around. You want to be on the right side of that.
Yeah.
And then this is getting ready. There's the body on the right underneath the orange tarp there. And they will put them on the altar there with the men down there in the purple right here. Is where they're going to start to build. And this is going on, we're going across the river and watching this, and it's just what happens over there. It's kind of neat. And then various temples around that area. So we left Kathmandu, super highway there it is. And traffic everywhere, and sometimes it just stops, you don't know why. You keep going, all these various vehicles, and then you get to here and you go, oh, that's why. There's a boulder in the road, and they just push that across to get everybody going again. So you never really know how long it's going to take you to get from point A to point B. This is our trip down to Chitwan, and you can see the accommodations are pretty nice. This is the jungle area. This was our guide, who's a really celebrated birder down there, and his name is as long as that picture is across. And we follow him on Instagram. He's a really wonderful guy. Was fantastic taking us around. And then there are these long-necked divers. And then this is inside the park. Want some coffee? Right there. These are animals called garrels, Gharrail is what it's called. And they're in danger. And so this is a breeding farm for them inside this park at Chitwan. And then this was a surprise visitor. Unfortunately, he was not that interested in us. But he's spraying everywhere. What do you see?
Yeah.
Yeah. Magnificent animal. I don't know if he went. So we turned around at that point and went away from him. And then this is at the entrance to the park. And I took this video just because this guy was training this elephant. They use elephants like we use draft horses, a lot of work. And he was riding on the back of this guy, working him and kind of getting him around. But we found out that when you go to this place, people want to give you elephant rides to sit on the back. And fortunately, Oren, who was a little more enlightened than us, said, you don't want to do that. And if you've read about these elephants, what happens when they put these large baskets on the back and they put tourists in, over time their back sways. And it's a huge problem. So we begged off on doing that, which was great. Some of the Himalayan deer, the Nepali deer that were down in Chitwan. And then my daughter's an elephant nut, to put it mildly. And this is where they were kind of training and raising these young ones. And there's always controversy about elephants and how they're treated, etc. But over there, these are working animals. And these young ones get to play for a while, and then they get to work. And those are their moms that are hanging around there. And at night, often, bulls would come in and breed while they were there. We can have another one here, this other video. They were really fun to watch. And since Ada, my daughter, helped me with this slideshow, I told her, yes, I will show the elephants. Make sure I do that. So cute to watch. Okay. And then these are, you see where they put the tourists on the top. And we were taken there to get on there and just decided, no, we're not going to do that. And our guide actually thanked us for that. And not many people were taking advantage of that. Here is, I'll never work for National Geographic. There's a leopard right there. And it was a real treat to see him. And yeah, there he is in the middle of the picture. And there's a long story involved with how we knew he was there, but basically one of the guides was literally talking to us, and there were lots of people around, and he said, be quiet. You could not hear a thing. And this guy walked 30 yards, and he pointed to the tree. And we found it. I was like, whoa, you are pretty good at this. And so we gathered to see that. Here's a menu. You want some thupka? Or spring rolls, etc. And again, $1 is like 130 of those. So you get a spring roll for $2. Chicken, is going to cost you a little more. Burgers, etc. It's pretty standard in most of the roadside places that we went to. And some Indian food, as I said, there's a lot of Indian folks there. Curries and things like that. There's momos. There they are, Sarah. The momo. Yeah, exactly. And then this is the town of Pokhara, which is a beautiful lakeside town. Really is spectacular. And those are, of course, the Himalayas in the background. And you'll see a lot of Indian or Nepali families there. And what are they doing? They're going out to some of the temples that are in the middle of the lake to worship. And religion is everywhere there. And we were fortunate to be able to just observe and watch. And then, of course, we started climbing. We started walking after we saw this temple. We were told, all right, we now need to see what kind of shape our legs are in because we're going to go towards Annapurna. That's our crew at the lake. Just before we headed up a very steep walk to a Buddhist temple that was put there by the Japanese right here. In a spectacular place, right on this mountaintop. And it was a peace offering. This is a Tibetan refugee village where they have families and children and a Tibetan school. And of course the prerequisite Tibetan gift shop, which you can go in and buy all sorts of things. And these are some of the costumes at one of the museums that's there. And then in this mountain museum in Pokhara, they had these photos of just these great massifs. That's Mount Everest, of course. And then Manaslu, which is on our way. And then Annapurna. There's a great book called Annapurna by a man named Maurice Herzog, which was written in the 50s, a French climber, and just a spectacular story about climbing there. This is how we got around, and we see these views all over the place. And it was just fantastic being on the road. Those were our little private van that we had. And this is the beginning of our first walk, first day of our walk, and we're heading towards an area called Poon Hill or Gurapani. And we weren't really sure, are we walking trails, what are we doing? But a lot of the hiking, a lot of the trekking is either over these suspension bridges like this, which are high and fun to do, or the trails are really well laid out. Look at these are like steps almost, right? And you are going up quite a bit. And at this point, you're really only about 4,000 or 5,000 feet in altitude, pretty manageable. This walk will go up to about 12,000 people. And there we stayed at the luxurious Hotel Curious Camels. And pretty primitive, kind of like couple bunk beds there and decent bathrooms. These are the tea houses that you might have heard about as you walk along the trails, where they have cokes and different drinks and stuff like that, and they're just in all the right spots. These are the porters who will leave their packs there while they're getting a break and lining stuff up. And again, this was about 4 hours into our first day, and we finally made it to the town of Gurupani. And we spent the night there and got up at sunrise the next morning, go up to this area called Poon Hill. That's downtown Gurupani, there. And then this is from our, hotel that we stayed in. 10 roofs, and off in the distance, there's just mountains everywhere. Yeah, this is sunrise on top of Poon Hill. That is the Annapurna 1 on the left, and on the right is Annapurna 2. And we walked up this at dark. It was about 4 o'clock in the morning, and you're walking up with about 150, 200 other people. At the top, they have a little hut with hot chocolate and coffee. Very, very nice. This is a photo, a commercial photo of the same area. And then this is, you can see the people down below. I was in an observation deck of a tower looking down at Annapurna there. And there are people from all over the world there. All over the world,
Is that
Japanese,
snow?
Brazilian. That's snow up top, yeah, for sure. On the bottom, yeah, that's frost. Yeah. And I will say this, a kind of interesting thing about Nepal, maybe you guys saw this too. When we were over there, people said to us, oh, is this your first time here? Like, many, many people return again and again and again for lots of reasons, but I think one, it's spectacular. The infrastructure is very accessible, and it's very affordable when you're there. Again, this is more of the kind of trail that we found ourselves hiking on outside of Gurupani. Another break. This guy with the red jacket on, his name is Tinze. His only job was to carry a first aid kit and walk behind Artie, because they thought Artie was going to fall down all the time. He never did. He never did. But that guy was like a golden retriever right behind him the whole time. He didn't carry a damn thing except for the first aid kit. And kind of a map of while you're sitting there having coffee. You are here. ZEC. And here's Nima. He has the first aid kit there. That's Nima, always in the lead. And you'll have a picture here. There it is, Tinze right behind Artie, very concerned, very concerned. And Artie, of course, tried to speak to him. The guy spoke very little English, so Artie was exhausted every day at the end of it. Said, I can't talk like that anymore. These are our guys. Nima on the right, Tinze in the red. Those are the two porters. If they look like these guys are buddies from the neighborhood, they are. They're all from the same village. And that is a standard look on all their faces. They're happy, they're smiling, they're working their butts off, but they're just really delightful. They play cards with each other. They're just a great group. Some of the scenery here. This was probably our second or third or fourth night on the trail. Not lucky. Free Wi-Fi. There's Wi-Fi everywhere. There's cellular service everywhere. So they have that. You can recharge your phone on solar. Some places charge you 10 cents, $1 or whatever. But you can always plug your phone in. There's cellular coverage of the whole country. You can talk to somebody. And there's Wi-Fi in most of these places. These are rooms with terraces, as you can tell. And again, they were just 2 slabs with great foam mattress on it. They give you a really nice, comfortable blanket and a pillow. We carried our own sleeping bags, which was necessary because we did get cold at night. And there's the luxurious toilet area. I think if you open any one of those doors, it goes into the same thing. So, take your pick. There's a toilet, a Western toilet, 24-hour shower. It's all cold water. This is another tea house along the way where we stopped just to get some drinks and stuff. We would walk about 6 or 7 miles a day. And sometimes it was down, up. Sometimes it was up, down. And overall, we maybe did 3,000 or 4,000 feet of elevation. So it wasn't killer, but you definitely were hiking and you definitely were active. And that doesn't belong there. This is the kitchen of that little tea house we were just at. This young guy cooking us some balbat and some momos. It's pretty much what they do. And everything's clean, and they're very proud of their food. They're very proud to serve you, and they're incredibly hospitable. And then this is at the top of our hike for the highest point that we went to sleep. That's our friend Yak there. And this is at about 6:15 in the morning. It was so crowded, this particular tea house or particular place to sleep, that they put us in a metal shack that they normally reserve for the porters, and it was really cold. So as soon as the sun came up, there's Ada and Orrin sitting outside trying to warm up. And then here's Artie, who was freezing. It was a really cold night, and we just couldn't wait to get out in the sun. But when you look at that backdrop there, you know, you're just glad to be outside to see this. That's Annapurna 2 that Orrin and Ada are walking off with Nima. I went a little bit up this walk, but I couldn't take it. The altitude, we were at about 13,000 feet there, and I hadn't acclimatized as probably as well as I should have. And but the kids did great. You can see they don't have big hiking boots on or anything. You trek in tennis shoes. That's what you do. And there was a fair amount of very stereotypical Germans and Austrian men over there that had boots that were killer. I mean, they were like up to their calf. That somebody said, "Oh, you need these mountain boots over there." No, you can wear tennis shoes. And these guys eventually got the tennis shoes, I'm quite sure. Beautiful clean air, beautiful skies. And this is the two guys carrying our stuff. My stuff and Ada's stuff is on the right, and then Artie and Orrin's stuff is on the left. I think they probably each weighed about 40 pounds, 45 pounds total, maybe 50, not sure. And look, they don't care. They got that wrapped around their head, they're fine. And they're working for tips, you know, just like a lot of these poor guys who are working their butts off. And that's them walking down the trail. Another tea house along the way. And we're heading down now from the top of the walk that we've done. And we come into this farming community, which was beautiful. And we stayed at a really lovely hotel that had everything we needed. And then we ran across this wedding ceremony. Those are all men dancing. And here's the bride and groom. They're back in here. And everyone there was absolutely hammered. They were so fun. And Orrin, yeah, pretty fun. Orrin had been there long enough to where he actually spoke Nepali. And of course he looks like a Westerner, because he is. And he would walk up and start talking Nepali to these people, and it was like they saw a ghost. They couldn't believe that this young man could actually speak their language. We just took a walk in the fields here. And then we were told that we had an opportunity to walk 6,000 feet down, or they could call for a Jeep. So we called for the Jeep. And they came and took us down below. Back to Pokhara, beautiful world-class hotel, one of the nicest hotels I've ever stayed at. And when we got there, there was a festival going on for 4 days in November. And I do have that, what it's called. It's called Deepawali, or the Tihar Festival. I don't know if you guys were there in November, but this is the first, the first part of November. It's like Christmas everywhere, with the Christmas lights and everything, and it's to honor the Hindi goddess of wealth and prosperity, Lakshmi. And it's for 4 days in November. And in Pokhara, you can buy everything you can imagine to trek with. You can get North Face knockoffs, beautiful cashmere scarves and sweaters. And it's really a good destination and a beautiful, beautiful place. Good food as well. We had a lot of nice food there. And this is the festival. They have these sand drawings and sand stuff on the grounds right in front of the stores. There were a lot of people doing TikTok videos and dancing and stuff. And this is us having a final breakfast in Pokhara. There's a great buffet. And we're going to now get in the van and leave Pokhara. The man, the second from the left, who's right there, that's Pam Sherpa. He came to the States in Michigan as a Rotary person in high school, and he never left. He's kind of famous in Nepal. He was a guide, an Everest guide. And he married a woman who was in the guiding school, an Everest Sherpa woman, who was one of the first women to climb as a Sherpa to the top of Everest. And they got married there.
Oh,
And his family found out in his village that he got married on the radio. because he became a pretty big celebrity. So he's got a restaurant in Ann Arbor, he's got this travel company, he's a spectacular young man and has two beautiful daughters and could not be more gracious and more organized in the way that he does stuff. This is a little town we spent the night in called Bandipur on the way to Pokhara. And you can see how these houses are just on the hillside. You can see the road going up there. We walked up there. You're always walking up. And just to see stuff, it was really pretty. In some parts it was like a British, like the Cotswolds, Just absolutely gorgeous. So back in the Kathmandu, you can see they're also celebrating the festival there with all the lights dangling off there. And this is the Buddha temple. And we did laundry. We said goodbye to Artie. Oren went back to the States. And then we got ready. We lit some butter candles here. We got ready and we went, after being in Kathmandu for about 48 hours, we got in the car at 2 o'clock in the morning and we were driven in a taxi with our new guy, a guy named Nawan, to the airport at the town that's going to fly us up to Lukla, which is the beginning of the Kathmandu, or the Everest area. We got there at 5 a.m. thinking, oh, this must be an early flight. We didn't leave until 12:30, and primarily because of that fog that you see there. So those are the planes that take us up, and it's like a shuttle almost. It's a 35-minute flight into Lukla Airport. If you've never read about or seen a video of Lukla, it's considered the world's most dangerous airport. On a clear day, it's not very dangerous, and I don't think they'll land there if it's not a clear day. Essentially, you fly in the mountains, you dodge a few mountains, and you go in the runway, it's like that. And it's like landing on an aircraft carrier. They slam into the runway, and then they stop at the end of about a quarter of a mile, because at the end of the runway is a wall. And so you can't overshoot it, you gotta hit it right. So when we did get on there, these are all the people that somehow came later than us, but left earlier than us. I don't know what that was all about. We got on the plane, so me and Ada, that's Nawan, our guide back there. We're in the very front row because we're thinking, oh, we're gonna watch the approach. You couldn't see a damn thing. That's plastic there, and here were the guys there. They looked pretty casual because they were both eating their lunch on the way up to the landing strip. And this is Lukla. This is where it all begins. Right here is the tower. Right here, and I've got a shot of this later, is the runway. And you get there, and your bags may have been there on a previous flight. You have no idea. You just check out the bunch of luggage. This is the beginning of the walk.
It's one of 5 bridges we're crossing today across the Milk River.
5 bridges across the Milk River. And you want to make sure when you cross these big suspension bridges that no yak trains or donkeys are coming the other side, because they're not going to move. They don't go backwards. And so you get across there.
After lunch.
So then this is entering into the Sagamartha National Park. You can see up here, Sagamartha is another name for Everest, and Chulamunga is another name that they have. Everyone has to check their paperwork here. There's very strict controls on who can go into the park. All sorts of climbing groups there. It was really fun. We were there in November. Climbing season is really in the spring. So even though lots of people we ran into were starting on the Everest Base Camp trail, when they got to Everest Base Camp, which is not where we went, there was nothing there. There's a sign that says, "Welcome to Everest Base Camp," and you can see the Khumbu Glacier there. You can't see the top of Everest, but the climbers all show up in the spring. But there were a lot of people trekking there, and this guy right here, he's not going to make the trip. There are people all shapes and sizes. He makes it pretty far up the valley, but then a helicopter came and took him out. He didn't deal well with altitude, and it was not unusual to see helicopters take tourists out who weren't acclimatizing well. This is the first place where you can see a view of Everest, and this woman, no dummy there, she brings all her fruits and vegetables and Snickers bars and comes there every day, and while you're trying to get a gaze at Everest right over the top of that billboard, she's hawking you oranges and apples and stuff like that. I think she was about 112. This is an area, this is kind of a famous center of where you really begin the trek to go into Everest and into that valley. And this is a town called Namche Bazaar. And it's probably got 3,500 people that live there. If you've been to Everest, you've come through this town. And a lot of trekkers here from all over the world. And again, we actually saw 2 guys who were on blades, no legs, but they had these artificial blades. One of them was blind. And they each had a guide, and they were walking to Everest Base Camp, and we would hopscotch over them for a couple days. So when we got to Namche, we weren't really sure where we were staying. Our guide took us to a place, and he said, well, I got to talk to the proprietor here, and you guys might be staying in another apartment. Prayer wheels everywhere. And the water making them turn. This is again the walk up to your hotel, the area. And then this is in the tea house where we were staying. And I took this picture. See this clock right here?
Yeah.
You can see that at Ace Hardware Store. And this actually came from a Westerner who brought this to the owner. And because of that clock, I was actually visiting with the guy who was the owner. His name is Pemba. And we were shooting the breeze. And this is Pemba right here. And I told him I was from Montana, and we had one of these clocks back home where I come from. And he said, oh, well, I have a brother who's trying to get into Montana, and he's working on getting a visa. And didn't I pull out the mayor card quickly? And I said, well, you know, Pemba, I'm the mayor of a town in Montana. And so he was pretty happy about that. He gave us those scars, which were very nice, and I have one of the ones he gave me over there. And couldn't have been nicer, and really turned everything out. He didn't have a room in this place where he was, which is the center. There were pictures of Jimmy Carter there, of all sorts of dignitaries who had been through this place. Instead, he gave us his own apartment. Those are my feet up, you know, I'm watching TV, you know, something I couldn't believe. And he had this gorgeous apartment there with 3 bedrooms, so 8 and I each had our own bedroom and bathroom and hot water. And it was living large, I'll tell you what. We took this picture, we thought it was kind of funny, you know, a little cow right outside the steakhouse, you know. And of course, cows are sacred over there, like they are in India. That guy knew where to hang out. He was perfectly safe there. And again, this was out the window of the apartment that Pemba gave us, which was fantastic. And there's a Tenzing Norgay park. Tenzing Norgay was the Sherpa that went up with Hillary in 1957 to be the first 2 people to climb Everest. And this is a statue dedicated to him and to Hillary. And this is our walk. That's Abu Dhabi, which is a 8,200 meter mountain. And we're walking up to the Everest View Hotel. And these are just on the walk up there, villages across the way. And then we were having hot chocolate there. And of course, that's Everest right here. Right there. And that's the first place where you get to see it. A good shot, other than where the lady was selling us oranges. And really beautiful day. And this is the weather we had all the time, which was fantastic. This is a town that Hillary, Sir Edmund Hillary developed, and it's mostly schooling for children. And his foundation funds this village, and there are all sorts of things honoring him. There he is right there. And this was just on the way back down to Namche. We walked all the way up to that Everest view. Again, we were doing a lot of acclimatizing up. Go high during the day, sleep low. And then just some of a variety of these monuments and temples and worship areas that were just around. There's a museum in that area that is dedicated to collecting trash and making art from it. And it's called Sagamartha. And that's all empty beer cans and plastic bottles and stuff like that in the shape of a bird, an eagle. And there are all sorts of sculptures and things around for that. That's right above Namche. Yeah, Sagamartha next. And that's funded by a very wealthy Scandinavian guy. And then this is looking down on Namche, where we came up from for the day. So you'd think after you walked up that height, you don't ever want to have to walk down again. But you're going to go back down. You have a question, sir? No. And then again, more of Namche from the top looking down. And then this is the evening. You could do anything at night if you want. There were darts bars, there were beer bars and pubs and discos and stuff, but I was in bed by 9 o'clock. And then this is our walk as we begin to go up towards, our destination was a place called Gokyo-ri. And for 2 days, we would walk on the same trail as the people going to the Everest Base Camp. And then we would separate. They had 3 more days to go their way to the camp. We had 3 more days to go to the ridge or to the lake in the area we wanted to go to. And I took this video for a couple reasons. This is to take a break, but look at the shapes and sizes of everyone. I was by no means the oldest person on this trip, or the most fit. There were people there who were really out of shape, bigger, larger people, and they just took their time. And they had been several times. A lot of them were trekkers from alpine clubs in Europe. They knew what they were getting into, and they were just traveling as a group, taking their time, and really enjoying it. That's Nawan there, our guide. And this is the Amadabun Lodge and Restaurant.
I'm going to take a picture of this table. Trekkers, just to give you an idea of the age of
So again, all different shapes and sizes. These are Austrians, and then there were Aussies in the back, Australians. And we would, again, hopscotch on some of those, but then they split. And this is the break here at where one goes to Everest Base Camp. That way, and then this way, up to Gokyo. And we chose to go to Gokyo for 2 reasons. One, we thought it would have a better view of Everest Base Camp, and it would have fewer people, and we were right on both counts after speaking with our guides. And these photos are just our walk up, and again, I have them in here just to show you kind of the trails you walk on. It's really manageable. You're not wearing hard hats. You know, you got steps like this, which are steep and many. We had trekking poles the whole time. These are the villages. This is Machermo, where we were coming into to stay at one of these places. And Nawan would call ahead and make these reservations for us on this photo. This is Mole, yeah.
hours, 4,200 meters. I think it's more than 13,000 feet. I gotta do the math.
So 13,000 feet. This is where we got here about 4 in the afternoon, and you don't leave until 9 the next morning, 10. It's not a hustle. You're not hustling. You're taking your time. Inside, you know, the various trekkers having lunch and meals, and everybody visits with everybody. A lot of card games going on, and a lot of, you know, camaraderie, because all the people there love the mountains. And so you're with your people, and it's just fantastic. All ages. Now this is a helicopter right here, and I took this because the night before, all those Australians walked by us, and that big guy and 2 other folks, they had to go.
Where did they take
This was a, huh?
Where did they take them?
They take them back to Lukla, so they lower elevation, and there's a hospital there for them. And basically, they just have to bring it down, and they do better
Did
than
you do anything to help deal with the high altitude, take any medicine? Or
Yeah, you can take a diuretic, which I did actually, and I'm pretty sure it helped me quite a bit. Okay. Oh, yeah. And then this is looking back at where we come from that day with the river.
Looking south, we're about a mile away.
This is where we had been. We're about a mile from our destination, and we ran into a series of lakes. Number 1 lake and number 2 lake. That's what they're called.
That's 2 smaller lakes. And
I'm sorry, this should get out of here. And I am aware of the time, so I won't keep you here much longer. All right, so I'll move on. This is Gokyo. This is sort of the end of this particular trek here. You can go left over a pass or right over a pass and head to different parts of the mountains up here, but this is the town we were headed to. It was 16,000 feet in elevation and really delightful. We had nice rooms there, you know, very comfortable. And this is the village of Gokyo down here, and this is the lake. This is Gokyo the lake. Spectacular. And again, we climbed during the day and slept low, and this was all to make sure that we stayed acclimatized so we could do the final walk that we did. This is above, this is looking the other way from that picture I just took. This is a glacier, This is the largest glacier in all of Nepal, and it's probably 80 miles long, and it's just spectacular. And then again, inside the tea house. It got cold at night. These are little barrels for heat, and you couldn't get near that because all the porters knew quickly to be there about 5 o'clock, and they had their seats right there, so you kind of hovered in the background to try to stay warm. And then this is beginning to walk up. That is Everest right there. That's Lhotse, the second highest peak. And these are all from the hike up from Gokyo up to the ridge to see this. That is Everest right there, and that's Lhotse. And then back here is Tibet. And I have a video here that,
So this will
just
be,
hold this. When people say, oh, can I see your Nepali slides? I just bring this out. This is all you need to see. All this other stuff is filler and background, but this is at the top of this mountain we walked to.
360 video from almost 18,000 feet. We're at 17,790.
This is all China across the way. We're looking northwest there.
There's up here in world record time. This is the Chinese border. Looking northeast, I'm sorry, northwest. All these mountains have names and we'll find out later. The tall ones are all 8,000 meters plus. Now we're coming into the range that we saw the whole way up. Of course, that's Everest.
Everest right in the middle.
Right there in the middle. Can't see Lhotse, it's got a cloud over it. And behind the snowfield below Everest on the left is a mountain. It's in the middle there, that is Tibet. And tough to get into, obviously.
And then looking south, this is where we came from.
It's all looking west. And eventually south.
There's the lake where we were in the beginning of the day down below.
What a privilege to be here.
It'll bring you to tears.
So
You know, it's so beautiful there. It's just so beautiful.
it wasn't hard physically as much as having to stop every 10 or 20 steps, get your breath. My legs feel fine. And I'm back to breathing okay. But it's an issue. It's something you deal with. We left earlier than we anticipated. Because no one said there will be clouds of beer today.
He was right.
And he was dead right.
So the mantra when you hike over there, and I brought this back with me, is you walk slowly, you stop often, and you look around. You don't need to be looking at the ground, you know, and yeah, it did us well over there. So that was north in China, Everest. Kind of a panoramic shot from that viewpoint. Again, we were at 17,750 feet, I think, what it was. We stayed up there for sunset. My daughter met an Australian guy who was an investment banker from New York who seemed to be very interested in visiting with Ada most of the time. I left her with him at the top of the mountain, and they came down later, but
Sunset.
you can see what it looks like.
Someone over there.
Shumu. You hear people coughing, and that's what's known as the Khumbu cough, because these trails are very dusty from the yaks and the mules that are on there and the people, and there's a lot of dust. And in fact, Ada had a cough for 3 weeks after she left there, and I fortunately didn't get it. I was lucky. This is the walk down. You head back to Namche and then back to Lukla, one of the villages we stayed at. That's Malermo. And you see this on the way down as well.
Dublin. Little friend there joined us. He was the head of the herd. There were probably 3 or 4 of those goats there. And then one of our last suspension bridges. A lot of prayer flags. Some over there, they're everywhere. This is a Sherpa hospital. The president of the country it's a woman. She was there in the morning. They helicoptered her in. They did a ceremony, and we took a picture. This is a brand new facility for people coming off the mountain. And helicopters flying up and down this thing all the time, probably 20 a day that we can see. Terrace farming. End of the road. We come out. This is back at Lukla with our guide. We survived. We did it. We were very tired. This is the kid that carried our stuff. This is the only picture I have of him. There's 2 things that are funny about this. He was a great young guy. He didn't speak any English. He was from the same village. Nawan and Nima, those guys are all from the same place. I gave him that coat. I bought that coat in Alaska in 1974, and I figured it's time to get rid of it. And gave it to him. He loved it. And he has that thing around his head because he got a pretty big tip for this trip. And he went and had his hair dyed blonde. And he couldn't wait to go home to his village and show off his blonde hair. And he was a really, really fun kid. And then this is the airport. Here's the runway. It's really slanted. I'll show you in a second. I got a video here. But you fly into this thing coming out from these mountains over here, and right where I'm standing is a wall. So you gotta land, you gotta come to controlled stop, and then you fly into this area. And then, so this is when we were leaving. Again, we got there early, we left late. And, this is from the airport. Watch the angle that this thing goes down. Oh, what do you know?
It's not going anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And when you're on that plane, you feel that as you go down. Yeah. This is the VIP waiting room at the Lukla airport, and well, there's that guy from Australia that they brought back earlier. He had some stories to tell. And then these are just some of the ticketing and things like that. And then this is baggage check, very official. And this is the Army guy checking your bag for weapons and stuff. He squeezes it and then throws it behind him. Off you go. There's no line here. All the luggage is going to the same place, so you just throw it in there, and sooner or later it gets there. This is our last night. This is my last photo. This was walking around Kathmandu with Oren in the Nawari district. And I took a picture of this because this guy's campaigning for mayor. So, he got the same crowd as I did. And, it was pretty funny the way he was talking up there. So, anyway, there you go. A couple things I'll leave you with. That book Annapurna, which was excellent. But if you're interested in reading about Everest from a different angle, before we went over, we read a book that was called In the Shadow of the Mountain. It's written by a Peruvian woman named Silvia Vasquez Lovato. And it's a woman who has a fascinating story, but through her life she's become a mountain climber, but she lives in San Francisco and takes women who have been battered and abused that are in the shelters there, and will take 4 or 5 at a time and do this walk that we just showed you, to Everest Base Camp, and the journey that they go through, because it's difficult. And for these women who've never done that before, and so In the Shadow of the Mountain, it's a great book. And we were in Namche. I was looking at the library there that the guy had, and he had that book there. And I pulled it off and I said, Pemba, have you read that? He says, read it, open it.
And I opened it, and there was an inscription from the author to Pemba for, keeping her, having her there, et cetera. So, anyway, thank you for coming. Happy to answer any questions. The name of the outfit I went out with was Imperial Expeditions. I highly recommend them. Once I got to Nepal, it was first class all the way and private, everything, private vans, hotels, everything was taken care of. And our cost was about $200 per day per person. So that was including housing, meals, tip, transportation, flight to Lukla and back, and some just incredible friends and experiences that were there. So, yeah.
In the town with the steakhouse,
Yes,
if
Namche.
the cattle are sacred there, what's the food in the steakhouse?
Yeah, it's a buffalo. Yeah, that's what they do. Never had any. They actually have buff momos and never went near that. I pretty much eat anything. So, it was fun. Yes?
I have a question. I'm just curious, given the amount of time that you spent outdoors and in nature, and also the exposure to the different temples, the prayer flags, people living their religion, I wondered how it, or if it influenced and the people you were with, your daughter, if it influenced your sense of spirituality.
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And I will tell you, just being in Nepal is incredibly spiritual, just because of you have prayer flags everywhere, right? So you're constantly reminded that people are praying for these things. But then where you are, it's just overwhelming. And like I say, when we were at the top of Gokyo Reed, I was in tears. I mean, I was just so happy to be in that place. And I think whenever you go to a place where they have religion that it's that apparent, you get that sense. But to participate with it from an outdoor experience was wonderful. It was, again, a privilege, a real privilege to do that. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
You went by some agriculture fields. What are they growing?
Barley mostly. A lot of barley and lentils, because they eat a lot of lentils, although they import a lot from India, and they get them from us. Montana is the largest exporter of lentils in the country. And so they, I may have been eating some Montana lentils.
But do they eat the barley or do they make beer out of it over there?
Well, they do have beer for sure, and they have other, much more potent alcohol things. But yeah, that barley's the big one.
We don't really eat barley here.
No, but they'll make tea and they'll.
Yeah, they make barley tea and they put like butter in it. And,
Yeah.
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 That's true.
They make like a barley mush with tea and butter.
So how did I do, ladies? You've been to Nepal.
It was a long time ago, way back in 1977. So I think some of it's changed a lot.
Yeah.
Like you said, the only way you can get there is through Doha, Qatar.
Well, if you go the way I went, going, east, I guess, is that you can go through Singapore or go from, Seoul and go
But
that
can
way.
you go overland through India?
Can you go overland? You probably can now.
Because that's
Yeah.
the way we went.
Yes, I think you can now. There are times where there are border disputes and there's an issue, but we were really near the Indian border. Matter of fact, we could see India when we were at Chitwan. So yeah, you absolutely can. Absolutely can. So, yeah.
So I don't know I don't know if this is a dumb question or not, but is Tibet an actual nation north of Nepal?
Yeah, Tibet is it was a country that was absorbed by China.
It was absorbed by China.
Took it
I was
over.
going to say it's kind of like a state of mind now, isn't it?
Well, it's a real state, but
state.
unfortunately the Chinese run it.
Oh,
And they've
okay.
done their
So
best to put Chinese monks in there that practice the Buddhism that they want to see practiced.
Okay, so it's like would be the equivalent of like a state within China.
Yeah.
You're saying. Okay.
Yeah, very controlled.
So it is actual.
Yeah.
It's a place, and you could see it from where you were at the top of
We
those.
can
heights.
see a mountain that was there.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's great. When Sheila and I were over in India 30 years ago,
Yeah.
a long time ago, we tried to go from the Indian Himalaya into Tibet, and there was a dispute, not related to the Chinese, but there was a thing going on about fuel. And there was a big hassle with the fuel that India was shipping up there, and there was a problem, so we couldn't get into Tibet. And so we did it. Kind of what's happening with the water rights now between Pakistan and India up in the Kashmir area.
You said fuel, F-U-E-L?
F-U-E-L, yeah,
And
petrol.
what was
India was exporting fuel to Tibet, and they were getting something in return, and there was a problem at the border, and they
The
were,
fuel was oil or coal?
oil, yeah, oil, definitely. Yeah. Whereas Nate Bargatze would say oil. Okay.
Did you see any Christian churches?
Yeah, yeah, all sorts of religion, not a lot, but they were there for sure. Especially in the tourist area in Kathmandu, there's a particular tourist area near the embassy, and there's a lot of shopping that goes there. And there was a LDS church, of course, and there was a Catholic church there as well. So, yeah.
What is Nepal exporting to the US?
That's I don't know. Bowls, you know, I don't know. Certainly.
Flags?
Huh?
Prayer flags?
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know. It's amazing what I didn't know when I got there, you know? And, you know, again, I wasn't there really to see Kathmandu, but it kind of throws itself in your face with the crematorium and the temples were spectacular.
As Peter said, enlightenment.
Yes, exactly. Okay, good. There's plenty, is there food back there, Sarah? I think there is, yeah. Thank you, Sarah, for that. Thanks for your patience.